In 1924, a 2-year-old collie named Bobbie got separated from his family on a road trip in Indiana. 6 months later, he showed up at his front door in Oregon, on his own, roughly 2,800 miles away. Nobody has ever fully explained how he did it. Now hold on to that story because here's why it matters to you. Imagine you come home from work and the backyard gate is open. Your dog is gone. Your heart drops. You start running down the street, calling their name, checking every corner, every bush, every stranger's yard. And in your head, this one thought keeps repeating. Will they find their way back? Do dogs even know how to do that? Is there some kind of built-in GPS in there? Because when scientists actually started tracking how dogs and cats get home, the answer turned out to be much stranger and much more human than a GPS. Let's get into it. Let's start with the big misconception. A lot of people genuinely believe animals have some magical internal compass. Like there's a chip inside them that just knows where home is. But here's the problem. That's not what's actually happening. No scientist, no vet, has ever found some special homing organ inside a dog or cat. There's no GPS chip, no sixth sense pointing to your front door. Here's the twist. It's actually way more impressive than a GPS. Because instead of one magic power, pets are combining multiple senses at once. Smell, sight, memory, and in some cases, even Earth's magnetic field. Scientists call this sensor fusion. Basically, your pet is running a live calculation in their brain, mixing different clues together to figure out which way is home. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Dogs and cats don't even do this the same way. Let's talk dogs first. In a study out of Czechia, scientists strapped GPS collars and cameras onto 27 hunting dogs and tracked over 600 of their trips through the forest. And here's what they found. About 60% of the dogs used what researchers call a tracking strategy. They simply turned around and followed their outbound route back toward their owner, more or less retracing their own path. Dogs have an extraordinary sense of smell, so scent is very likely part of how they pull that off, even though the GPS data itself can't prove exactly what they were smelling every step of the way. But here's the part that surprised researchers. Around 30% of the dogs didn't retrace their path at all. They took a completely new route home. And right before they did, most of them ran a short little sprint about 20 meters almost perfectly north to south. The scientists behind the study proposed that this compass run might help dogs establish a heading, possibly using Earth's magnetic field. It's a genuinely fascinating idea. But even the researchers are careful to say the dog's full navigation strategy still isn't fully understood. This is their best working theory, not a proven fact. So here's the honest version. Dogs seem to be combining a route memory, a strong nose, and maybe a rough sense of magnetic direction when the other cues run out. That's still one part of the puzzle. Which brings us to a different question. How far does any of this actually get a dog? This is where the epic long journey myth kind of falls apart. GPS collar data from the pet tracking company Fi found that 95% of dogs who wandered outside their safe zone traveled no more than about 1.8 miles, roughly 2 kilometers, from home. And on average, dogs were found only around 0.13 miles away. That's about 700 feet, basically a couple of blocks. Those viral stories about dogs walking hundreds of miles? They're real, but they're the extreme exception, not the rule. For every one dog that pulls off a miracle journey, there are thousands found just a few streets over. Here's something else worth knowing. A major U.S. survey found that 93% of lost dogs were eventually reunited with their owners. And when you look at how one number stands out, 49% were located because owners physically searched the neighborhood themselves. Others turned up through ID tags, microchips, or shelters, but neighborhood searching was the single biggest factor. In other words, a dog's internal toolkit gets it partway there. But a huge amount of the actual getting home part is done by people, not paws. Now let's flip over to cats, because their story looks pretty different. Here's a fun fact that surprises a lot of people. Cats barely go anywhere in the first place. One GPS study tracked 92 house cats and found something wild. On average, cats spent 79% of their outdoor time within just 50 meters of home. That's basically their own yard and maybe 2 neighboring ones. That's their normal, everyday range. Not just what happens when they're lost. And a separate study on actually missing cats found something that lines up with it. 75% of lost cats were located within 500 meters of where they disappeared. Put those two together and a pattern shows up. Cats live small, and when they go missing, they usually don't go far from that small world either. One more small but interesting clue. In one experiment, cats reacted with visible surprise when their owner's voice played from an unexpected direction. A hint that cats track familiar people spatially, even if it's not proof of a full mental map. As for scent and magnetism, the truth is we just don't have much research here. There's far less evidence that cats use long-distance scent trails the way dogs might, and no strong evidence that cats use Earth's magnetic field to navigate. That doesn't mean they can't, it means nobody has proven it yet. What we do know is cats mostly survive being lost by staying inside their tiny, familiar territory and waiting, which explains this next stat perfectly. The numbers here are honestly fascinating. 93% of lost dogs get reunited with their owners. 75% of lost cats do too. But how they come back is completely different. 59% of cats return home completely on their own. They just show up at the door one day. Meanwhile, most dogs are found because a human went out and searched for them. Why the difference? Cats tend to hide when they're scared, tucked under a porch behind bushes, staying quiet and close. Dogs, on the other hand, are generally more mobile and more likely to be spotted by someone. Whether that's approaching a stranger, showing up at a doorstep, or just being seen wandering a street. Broadly speaking, cats survive lost situations by staying still and close. Dogs are more often found because they're out and moving, where people can actually see them. Two totally different survival strategies. Same result. Most of them make it back. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, but what about Bobbie the Wonder Dog who walked 2,800 miles? Or that house cat who turned up 800 miles from Yellowstone? Here's the truth behind those. Bobbie is real. The Oregon Humane Society actually investigated his case and confirmed the roughly 2,800-mile journey. And a Labrador named Bucky made a genuinely documented 500-mile return from Virginia to South Carolina. Both are considered legitimate, independent journeys. Incredible, rare, and honestly still not fully explained by science. But some other "my pet traveled 1,000 miles" stories have a very different explanation once you dig into them. The animal was actually transported somewhere by a person, knowingly or not, and was only identified later through a microchip scan. Not walked there, driven there. The wild long-distance stories usually come down to one of two very different things. An extremely rare true homing feat, or a microchip simply doing its job after a pet ended up somewhere through human hands. Which brings us to the most important part of this whole video. Here's the real takeaway, and honestly, this is the part every pet owner needs to hear. It's not magic. It's not a GPS. It's a combination of a pet's natural instincts and fast human action. Microchipping makes a massive difference. Among dogs that ended up in shelters, only 22% of the unchipped ones were reclaimed by their owners. For microchip dogs, that number jumps to 52%. And searching immediately matters just as much. Almost half of all recovered dogs were located simply because their owner walked the neighborhood and looked. So is there a GPS that gets lost pets home? Kind of just not the way we imagined. It's not one single system inside your pet. It's their nose, their memory, maybe a rough sense of direction. And just as often, it's the person out there searching for them. Some of it really is your pet, but a lot of it is you. And that brings us back to Bobbie. Nearly a century later, nobody can reconstruct every one of those 2,800 miles. What we can say is that his journey is extraordinary precisely because it's so far outside what most lost pets ever do. For every Bobbie, there are thousands of dogs and cats found a few streets from home, with a little help. Here's the bottom line. Dogs and cats don't have some hidden GPS chip guiding them home. What they may have is a combination of smell, memory, instinct, and, at least in dogs, possibly some sensitivity to Earth's magnetic field. But the real secret to getting a lost pet back is proximity. It's a microchip, and honestly, it's you not giving up the search. So if your pet ever goes missing, Don't just wait by the door hoping they'll magically find their way back. Get out there. Search close to home first. Check under porches, behind bushes, ask your neighbors. And please, if your pet isn't microchipped yet, go get that done today. It genuinely could be the difference between losing them forever and getting them back in your arms. If this video helped you understand your pet a little better, drop a like and let me know in the comments. Has your dog or cat ever gone missing? What happened? Subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.